Something that's amazing to me and I never noticed before is the amount of dead trees in this forestry. This is actually a National Parks forestry run by National Parks. It's a state forest. And when you have a look at how many of these trees are actually dead, and you listen once the motorbikes are gone, and you can hear how many bell miner birds are around in this area because of the volume of lantana that's here. It's incredible. All the way through these areas are just a complete wash of lantana, wall to wall under these trees, down through all of the watercourses. It's an incredible thing to be able to have a look at all of this and see the sheer level of it on both sides of the road. And that's National Parks supposed to be protecting our heritage. Every time the National Parks takes over more lands, the Greens say, oh, this is fantastic, but you have a look at exactly how the lands are looked after. And according to the biosecurity, this is illegal. If material is expanding on a property, it's illegal, and it's subject to an enforcement notice. Yet, according to the Premier and all these other flunkies, that's completely different when it's actually them. But the truth is, it's absolutely not. It's absolutely not true. In fact, if you look at the documents that the state government puts out, it actually says that that's not true. But it shows the contempt for the Australian people and the contempt for the ecology in the levels of materials that they leave laying around everywhere and allow to expand all the time. It's pretty windy here. I might just have a bit of a go at flying the drone, see if I can get some sort of idea of the scale of this stuff for you. It's quite impressive, I can tell you now. Welcome everybody. Thanks again for popping in and having a quick look at this. This is South D'Aguilar National Park, and National Parks controlled state forestry. What's most important about this documentary is to understand how lantana affects koalas and other wildlife. On the other side of the road here is actually state forest that is controlled by National Parks, and it shows you graphically how a sea of lantana stops any koalas or any wildlife from actually interacting with the trees, which is a very important part of our ecology, and it's a major player in the deaths of koalas with wild dog attacks and other attacks on them. And it's not till you have aerial footage. That's one of the things. I can't show you from ground level everything that you need to see when you're asking questions about the lantana and these issues. None of this material is allowed to be here. It's illegal to allow lantana to expand over lands under your control. Each one of these plants, each bush that you see as a single clump, gets you between 400 and 3,600 new plants each year, depending on how close it is to the water and how close it is to the roadside, getting water from the roadside. You can see by the vitality and the colour of these plants the amount of water that it has access to and the vitality of the plant itself growing. So when the Premier and the departments under her control say to you that lantana is low risk, That's a sea of Lantana as far back as you can see to the hillside above as I go up. That's solid Lantana all the way through there, and the vines growing and killing these state forest trees. That's the type of management we have via our departments of national parks and of the forestry departments. No koalas are getting to any of these trees anytime soon, I can tell you now. Zero. And if anybody did try to get in there, they'd be subject to wild dog attack. They can't tell where the pathway is to the next tree. So our native fauna just gives up on anywhere where Lantana is got a hold like this. This cannot and will not exist anywhere on private lands, on farms. In this scale, it does not and will not exist. And yet we have it here illegally, in plain view of everybody, and yet nobody understands the legality or the deadly nature of this. These creeks as they stand here are completely lined for 20 kilometres, exactly as you see them now, continuously. With much of it, the animals can't even get to water except where these roadways go through a creek crossing, so they go down the roadway and into the water there. They can't get access to the water from the bank here. And you occasionally get an environmentalist that says, oh, that's a good thing, we don't want cattle going to drink water. Well, the native fauna can't drink water either. Can you imagine a koala having to hobble down a roadway like this for this distance to go to get water from the creek? How vulnerable it would be? So they just give up. They just don't go to these areas. So huge, vast levels of our nation are cut off to koalas and other fauna. And yet it's illegal for this to be done. It's illegal to release one plant to the environment. There's hundreds of thousands of plants just in the shots that I'm showing you here. Hundreds of thousands, probably 1 million plants when you look at the sheer scale as far back as this material goes. And under those canopies, those plants are growing all into those canopies of those trees. So if a fire does come through, it destroys the entire ecosystem. Plus nothing gets past it. As far back as that forestry goes is exactly the same. Completely illegal. And yet the Premier says, well, the departments are responsible for themselves. National parks are responsible for this, she says. Well, I would have thought the Premier would be responsible for what happens within the state, being that she's the head of the state and controls all of those departments. They answer to her. There's no way in the wide world for a second that I believe that the public accepts that these departments operate completely unattended. I believe that the general public would believe that she's responsible for their actions. If they are doing the wrong thing and operating illegally, then surely these videos would be of an interest that she should be taking action against them. The Biosecurity Act of 2014 says it's illegal to release Lantana into the environment, yet we have 50,000 acres is actually the measured size of the area across the road that I was over before, not counting the national parks over that side of the road. That goes for thousands of kilometres north. I would hate to work out what that area of that area is. But on the other side of the road, that's 50,000 acres. If you worked it out, that's $200 million issue that the Premier says is low risk. That she doesn't have to worry about. She doesn't have to operate illegally. Well, actually, the law says different. And we really, as a nation, need to be very frightened when our premiers and our prime ministers have an attitude that they aren't answerable to the courts and to the law. When it clearly says on every document in government circles that they are equally as responsible. There is no exemption for them at all, under any level, and yet all of this material is here. And she has never once sought any answers as to how to handle this material and what to do, and which material poses the greatest threats. We need to change our policies, because the amount of money that this is costing our environment in the dieback of our forestries, the bell minor bird populations in these areas killing our native forestry is enormous, and it's going to be one of the biggest things through 2019. Anyway, you've had a quick fly over, you've seen such a horrific sight, and these plants have already flowered about 5 times this year. In the last 3 months, they've flowered 5 times. And with the rain we're getting now, it's even worse. Anyway, thank you for popping in. Gary from Lantana Removal, Queensland.com.au. Look us up and check us out. Bye-bye.
The natural and cultural heritage. It's amazing how much of a joke that all is. The national parks and wildlife. Unbelievable. Lands that are supposed to be for our heritage are completely lost. Seeds that float in water, allowed to grow on the sides of watercourses like this. This is their 5th seeding this last 3 months. They've already flowered, blossomed again, the 5th time in 3 months in the watercourse. And the government says there's no problems. These plants are 30 feet tall. Unbelievable. It's the problem when you allow weeds to grow down into watercourses, and those particular weeds really enjoy the actual need for water. Oh Lord, there's a lot of seeds in here. Unbelievable. At least 30 foot, heading up to 40 feet tall, these plants. And this is a national park, this is. This is a national park watercourse, creek. Bell minor birds all over the place. So there's the preferred vehicle for these materials. Amazing. Lantana everywhere. Well, hello everybody, I'm Gary, I'm the Lantana removal guru. So here we are basically up at Dundas in amongst the beautiful, beautiful creek and the Lantana at the state forest. This shows you this place is only barely holding together because of cattle and cattle barging through. See the spiky apple? Soda apple, all of the Lantana through here, and only because the cattle are still barging through these little bits and pieces is this holding together at all before it's finally overcome. So in 2020, when they kick everybody out of the forestry leases, it doesn't have much more to go, so it's pretty well alright, isn't it? It's not really going to be a problem for it to revert to complete and utter Lantana, and places like this completely lost forever. When you look at these tragedies about to unfold and the government can't make a go of it while it's collecting grazing leases, look at all of this spiky apple all through here. All of the Lantanas are complete no-go zone. See how there's only one little area there that they duck through that side, and then that'll be closed over and they won't get through there. Once they can't poke their nose into it and get to somewhere, they give up, and then that's it. The Lantana takes over completely from that point and it's completely lost. You know, all of the seeds of these weeds float, and it's why they have given up completely on these watercourses. It is such a living tragedy to see what is about to happen over millions and millions and millions more hectares of our lands, our treasures. And then the seed pressure from being floated downstream is going to be even worse, even stronger. And this is what a national park looks like. Absolute tragedy. Why would you give them any more land to work with when this is what everything they handle ends up like and is headed towards? All the seeds just falling straight into the water and straight downstream every time there's the slightest bit of rain. Absolute tragedy. Terrible. Look at the seeds here, all falling straight into the watercourse. What is the future for our nation when this is the conduct of our state government? When you have a look at the fall on the land here from the roadway, and all of those seeds I just photographed off, all of these plants are on their fourth seeding straight down into the watercourse down the bottom of the hill there. And you see what the possibilities are It's an absolute tragedy. Absolute crime what our state government gets away with. And it's next to impossible to get them to act within the law and honour their responsibilities under the law. All the wild tobacco that floats, all of the lantana, just goes on through all of these watercourses. These watercourses keep crisscrossing this road for kilometre after kilometre, all the way up to Mount Glorious and over into Sanford. It's an enormous area that is a zone of influence, and that's what we're battling, farmers and landholders. Dear oh dear. Okay, well, you've seen some more of that footage, so let's see how you go looking at Google Earth and having a look at the infestations and where they lay and how widespread they are. When you look right underneath the lantana, you can see nothing's moved the leaf litter under there for forever. For years and years and years and years. Nothing's scratched under it. Nothing's moved it. Nothing's walked through there. It's incredible. Very little light gets to the ground at all in any shape or form nowadays. Once the canopy overtakes that, and then it just starts climbing to destroy all of the upper story. Unbelievable, the level of the infestations for thousands and thousands of hectares, and nothing at all being done. And that's supposed to be our cultural and natural heritage. A noxious weed that it's illegal to allow it to be released into the environment under the Biosecurity Act, and yet that's what we have.